You probably think Central Park has always been a peaceful green space in Manhattan, but what if I told you it was built on top of an entire thriving community that was brutally destroyed? This is the tragic story of Seneca Village, America's first significant settlement of free African Americans that was wiped off the map to create one of New York's most beloved landmarks. Picture this, it's 1825, and in what's now the heart of Manhattan, a remarkable community is taking shape. Seneca Village stretched from roughly 82nd to 89th Street, between 7th and 8th Avenues. This wasn't some random settlement. It was a beacon of hope and independence for free Black Americans in a time when such opportunities were incredibly rare. The village began when Andrew Williams, a young Black man, purchased 3 lots of land for just $125. Word spread quickly, and soon other African Americans followed suit, buying property and building homes. By the 1850s, Seneca Village had grown into a vibrant community of nearly 300 residents, with about 2/3 being African American and 1/3 Irish and German immigrants. But here's what makes this story even more remarkable. These weren't just houses scattered around. The residents had created something extraordinary. They built 3 churches, including the All Angels Church, which served as both a spiritual center and community meeting place. There was a school where children learned to read and write, giving them opportunities their parents could only dream of. The community had its own cemetery, shops, and even a few small businesses. What's crucial to understand is that owning property in Seneca Village meant more than just having a place to live. In New York State, property ownership was tied to voting rights. These Black property owners could vote in elections, giving them political power that was virtually unheard of for African Americans elsewhere in the country. They weren't just surviving. They were thriving and participating in democracy. The residents took immense pride in their community. They maintained well-kept gardens, raised livestock, like pigs and chickens, and created a self-sufficient ecosystem. Children played in the streets while adults worked various trades, some as laborers, others as servants in wealthy Manhattan households, and a few as small business owners within the village itself. But by the 1850s, New York City's elite had their eyes on this land for a very different purpose. The city was growing rapidly, and influential politicians and wealthy citizens believed Manhattan needed a large public park to compete with European cities. They looked north of the developed areas and saw approximately 843 acres of land that seemed perfect for their vision. The problem was that this land wasn't empty. Besides Seneca Village, there were other smaller communities, farms, and settlements scattered throughout the area. But the city's power brokers, including newspaper editor William Cullen Bryant and landscape architect Andrew Jackson Downing, pushed forward with their park plans regardless of who lived there. In 1853, the state legislature authorized the use of eminent domain to acquire the land. This legal maneuver allowed the city to forcibly purchase private property for public use, supposedly for the greater good. The residents of Seneca Village and other communities suddenly found themselves facing an impossible situation. They had to sell their homes and leave, whether they wanted to or not. The compensation offered was insulting. While some property owners received payments, many residents felt the amounts were far below the true value of their homes and land. Worse still, many renters received nothing at all. These families had invested their life savings and decades of work into building their community, only to watch it all disappear for what they saw as inadequate compensation. The destruction began in earnest in 1857. City workers and contractors moved through Seneca Village systematically, tearing down homes, churches, and businesses that had stood for over 30 years. Families were forced to pack their belongings and find new places to live, in a city where discrimination made housing options extremely limited for Black residents. The All Angels Church, which had served as the heart of the community's spiritual and social life, was demolished along with everything else. The school where children had learned to read and write was reduced to rubble. Decades of community building, relationships, and memories were literally bulldozed away. What happened to the displaced residents remains one of the most heartbreaking aspects of this story. Many scattered throughout Manhattan and Brooklyn, but they never again achieved the same level of community cohesion and property ownership that they had enjoyed in Seneca Village. Some families managed to purchase property elsewhere, but many found themselves relegated to overcrowded tenements in less desirable areas of the city. The children who had grown up in Seneca Village were particularly affected. They went from living in a community where Black achievement and education were celebrated to being dispersed into neighborhoods where they faced much greater discrimination and fewer opportunities. By 1858, Central Park's construction was underway on the cleared land. Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vos began implementing their design for what would become one of America's most famous urban parks. But almost immediately, the history of Seneca Village began to fade from public memory. For nearly 150 years, most New Yorkers and Central Park visitors had no idea that they were walking, jogging, and playing on land where a thriving community once stood. It wasn't until archaeological excavations in the 1990s that physical evidence of Seneca Village was rediscovered, bringing this forgotten chapter of American history back into the light. Today, there's a small commemorative plaque near 85th Street and Central Park West, but it seems inadequate recognition for an entire community that was erased. The story of Seneca Village serves as a powerful reminder of how urban development has often come at the expense of marginalized communities, a pattern that continues to this day in cities across America.